Hello coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach interview. Joining us today is Matt Willmott. He's worked at strength conditioning roles at professional level with Leicester City, MK Dons, Swansea City, and today he joins us to talk about the challenges of traditional thinking and the myths around pre-season training, how to plan it, how to manage it, how to maximise your time with the team on the grass and in the gym. Some brilliant insight. If you enjoy, please like and subscribe. And if you want access to Matt's presentation, which he just did for our Modern Soccer Coach Periodization package, we've got 4 expert webinar presentations delivered around periodization, pre-season planning, available now on the Modern Soccer Coach website. I'll put the link below as well, modernsoccercoach.com/shop. You can get the periodization package. Thank you so much for the support. Here is Matt. Enjoy. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Really excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a good pleasure to be on here and talk a lot of things football for sure.
Talk things football at a time that everyone's starting back. See the post this morning. Some colleges have started with pre-season training. So our topic is going to be the do's and don'ts of pre-season training. And again, everyone will say, well, my schedule, high school coaches will say my schedule's this and this, and college coaches will say, you won't believe, Matt, my schedule, but you've worked at a level that is multi-game weeks and pretty robust football. So let's see how we can try and create that there. You've obviously done the webinar, brilliant presentation on the webinar for Modern Soccer Coach. And with that there, your starting point, you're saying is a basically performance goal. And I wanted to kind of start at that point where working through that as a coaching staff, sitting in an office or sitting around a table, talk about how you would go through that or how you would advise a coach to go through setting that or recognizing and identifying that performance goal.
Yeah, I think it's such an important thing, having that end goal in mind and having that thing that you're looking for whenever you're designing your program or designing a plan. I think there's so many things that come into play within football: formation, style of play, the opposition, whatever it is. And they have really influences on the physical outputs within games. So being able to appreciate different styles of play and the way that different formations can impact those physical outputs can really give you that information, give you that head start in terms of designing the most optimal program in terms of what type of physical training are we doing, what type of practices are we putting on that's going to kind of put the players in the exposed sort of demands that they're going to face under a certain style of play or a certain tactic. We're kind of lucky at times, obviously, with GPS and any sort of camera aids in terms of getting some objective kind of data on physical outputs and kind of understanding the exact kind of demands within football, whether that's in, a full match capacity, whether that's breaking it down into certain periods and what we class as kind of periods of peak intensity and peak demand, so those worst case scenarios. And with that, you're just being able to identify the type of movements, the type of physical actions that are going to kind of be replicated and kind of be demanded of the players in each style of play. So, you don't always need the vast technological data and resources available to us. You can kind of just, by purely understanding football or watching games, a possession style based team will have probably a lot more sort of accel, decel, shorter, sharper type actions, whereas maybe a sort of longer style team and a more direct team will be introducing a lot more longer type high speed running and a lot more volume in terms of, covering a lot larger distances. So even the simplest level at that, you can kind of understand, right, if I want to be a possession style team, my players are going to be exposed to real high intensity periods, short, sharp actions, really high acceleration, deceleration actions. So therefore, within our training, we need to be able to replicate those type of actions, design practices, design sort of drills that you're going to be able to kind of put the players under those demands. So when they come into the games, they can not only cope with it, but they can actually perform, under that style. And I think that is such an important thing to be able to have that end goal, that performance goal in mind, and then sort of regress back in your design of your program. of course, there's going to be sort of the foundations that you're going to need to be put in place. But at certain points, you need to have that specificity in your training and have that kind of specific sort of training goal whenever you're sort of designing your practices and your drills.
Brilliant. Great start. There's, and you mentioned there, like some will have GPS, some will not have GPS. I think coaches, we almost move towards some old behaviors in terms of being quite generic with some lines we have. So let's just say I put you in a room today with 3 coaches who are working on pre-season planning. They don't have GPS. So you're saying, okay, we'll have the output goal, and then maybe it's an experienced coach and they're saying, listen, our goal is going to be, we're going to be fitter than ever before, and we're not going to have any injuries. Mm-hmm. How would you poke and prod and get that to be a bit more specific, or where would you take that conversation?
Yeah, so I suppose my first question would be, what is their definition of fit for their team? You know, in each position, what is their definition of fit? What do they expect and what are they demanding of their players in each position in their own style of play? Because the simple fact of a fullback in a team that's possession-based will do a completely different set of physical actions than a fullback in a direct style of play. So being able to appreciate and understand what are they looking for, what do they want from their players in each position, and then you can kind of, as I say, regress back in your design and say, right, if your fullback, you're expecting him to be a really sort of offensive and attacking member of your team, and as well as obviously a defensive-minded player. But if you want that, then we're going to have to expose them to high levels of high intensity, high speed running, sprint actions, and also being able to repeat that over a number of times, over a certain amount of time, a full game. Whereas if you don't want that from your fullback and you want them more possession based and helping the build up, or in terms of, you know, building up from a goal kick, for example, then they're going to need to be doing short, sharp actions. And obviously, there's differences in body position. There's differences in the actions that they're going to have to do all over the place. So I would, from a real simple term, just really break it down. Each position, what are they actually wanting and what is the demands that they're looking for? And then working with their staff, you can then help design practices that kind of replicate those actions and put the players under stress, and put them into an exposed position where they have to adapt and they have to then condition themselves to sort of be able to do this. Like I say, it's not only being able to cope, but it's also being able to perform. And that kind of flips over to the no injury side of pre-season, of any training program, really, is that I think my sort of personal mindset towards pre-season, in particular with the no injury thing, has really changed over the period of time that I've kind of worked in professional football. Is that when I first came into it, I thought, right, I'm going to design the absolute perfect pre-season. It's going to be so book smart. It's going to be brilliant. No one can get injured from it. It's going to be absolutely nailed to the meter and all this type of stuff. And then, in reality, we are using all the resources we have available to us, GPS data, previous training history, previous sort of injury history, designing their own individual program. But essentially, we are pushing the boundaries of their own physical capabilities. That's how we're going to adapt. That's how the players are going to actually improve and develop their own physical capability. You're kind of treading on the line, we always say. You're tiptoeing over the cliff edge, because if you don't push that ceiling and push that boundary, then you're not ever going to develop the physical capability that is going to be able to perform. They might be able to just cope and get through games, but if you want to actually perform in a certain way and improve physically, then you're actually going to have to push the ceiling a little bit. Of course, we're going to do this in a really safe and controlled and objective manner. And that's where we use previous GPS history, our knowledge and our experience of type of session planning and type of session drills that sort of get certain sort of objective data. We know if we've planned it properly and we've sat down with the coach properly, we should have an idea on what type of metrics certain sessions are going to kind of produce. There's certain sessions that will produce high levels of high speed running and sprint distance, where other sessions will be a lot more sort of accel, decel based and kind of high intensity. So it all comes down to our planning and being able to objectively plan things. But at the end of the day, we do need to be trying to push those boundaries and push the players and raise their ceiling. that's the only way that they're actually going to adapt to that demand and have that kind of physiological adaptation that's going to make sure that they can perform when needed.
Well, this is a great topic. The risk piece, which like I saw that come into the culture around probably about 5-10 years ago with it. You know, you would almost, rather than pre-season signings, it became in the headlines of who was injured, and then social media would take that story and write, oh, it's a dinosaur organizing training. Probably the first bit of criticism that strength and conditioning coaches got in the football community was like, oh, hold on a minute here. But then there's also a risk the other way too, right? Like there's a risk of starting the season and trying to play the game that you identified in your first answer and actually sitting there at 3:00 on a Saturday and not being able to play that game.
Yeah, it's as dangerous to undercook someone as it is to overcook someone. So if you've not exposed them to the correct level of chronic load and the high speed and the sprint distances, if you've not exposed them to a amount of maximal sprints that they need to do, then they are more susceptible to a hamstring injury, for example, if it's the sprint. I think it's unrealistic to ever think you're going to go through a pre-season and get no injuries at all. I think that's unrealistic, if I'm honest. I think that the demand to the game is increasing each year. It's getting harder and harder, more intense, quicker, faster, more powerful. And I think with that comes that added risk. But what we try to always say that what we're looking to do is those avoidable injuries, like those injuries, whether it's soft tissue, whether it's kind of tendon management, those avoidable injuries, make sure we are picking them up and avoiding them injuries. Whether that's through our own monitoring techniques, through GPS, as I say, through individual programming. Players' previous injury history is massive. And if we can really have a true sort of knowledge and sort of education on their own injury history, we can really plan appropriately and put things in place that they can do outside of training and off the pitch and in the gym to make sure that they are always looking after their bodies in certain areas that they may be susceptible to injuries. And I think it's just this, the biggest thing is also the expectation that everyone has. I think if the plan has been put in place and everyone has been communicated effectively and everyone has the expectations that we're going to push boundaries here, like if we want to be this style of team and we want to be the fittest team and the most got high energy, real high output type team, we need to appreciate that we're going to be pushing players to certain limits and certain breaking points. And it's our job as performance staff, I suppose, and alongside working with the medical staff to make sure that we're monitoring that closely and picking up on things before they get to a problem and those red flags and appreciating those and then adapting each person's program sort of appropriately. But I think if the expectation is there that we're going to come out of this with no injuries, then I think that's unrealistic. And then that's when injuries do happen, you know, fingers get pointed and environments become tough. And I think that's really important that everyone is communicating the program effectively, working in that sort of multidisciplinary kind of team environment, that everyone has an input in terms of the design. It's the coach, it's the performance staff, it's the medical staff, and that we're coming up with this program together collectively that's going to really kind of develop the players' physical capabilities, of course. But with that in mind, it's you're developing a physical capability that means that they can do the tactical and the technical side that the coach wants to do. I think that's the most important thing, is that we are building a foundation that means they can do whatever you want to do from a tactical point of view, that they are able to perform in that way, rather than, like you say, get to week one of the season, you've undercooked them because you've been a bit worried about injuries, and then suddenly 60 minutes in, all hell breaks loose and people are cramping or people are breaking down and you're more susceptible to injuries doing that way. So, yeah, I think it's about expectation and reality and making sure everyone is together in kind of the process and the plan inside.
Hello, coaches. We take a quick break here. One of our most common questions that we get asked to give more information about is periodization and planning, especially during pre-season training. With training schedules and game schedules being so quick and fast and short and condensed, coaches are often challenged with finding ways to plan and get the tactical information and the rest and recovery and everything put together and be competitive in the games as well. So what we've done is we've put 4 presentations together from the experts in the game, not just theory and periodization models. We've got 4 webinars from people who have worked at the professional level. The topics: matching periodization of the game model, periodization of training sessions with game model implementation, improving agility and direction in elite soccer, and GPS and implementing tactical periodization in football. 4 webinars available. You can get them right now. They'll be emailed directly to you. You can watch them right away on the Modern Soccer Coach website. Tons of information. Phenomenal insight. Please check it out. Thanks for the support. Back to Matt. Yeah, it's really, really interesting, because I could see that having a knock-on effect with physicality. Like, if you're as a coach or a staff, if you're saying, listen, injuries and that is a priority for you, then not only is that going to be a load management issue, perhaps in terms of getting them ready for a game, but also, you might be a bit more, it might be a lack of physicality in the actual sessions where, all right, well, instead of, listen, I'll just keep this a bit unopposed, or I'll keep this here where, they're shadowing or anything got there, and then that could go the wrong way too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to, the old adage, train as you play, is so important. And we always used to say, whatever we did on the training pitch, we did it with a purpose. And we had that purpose in mind, that yes, we train with intensity and we train with real high intensity nature. And that was the best way that you're going to prepare for the game, and making sure that you're going into the game with that intensity and with that, like say, that physicality and those capabilities that they're going to make sure you can meet those demands on match day, and actually perform, and not just kind of cope and hope for the best on that match day when the whistle goes.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, fitness testing, also a popular subject. Some people are rolling out the beep test on day one. I've got to admit, Matt, when I was coaching, I would do fitness testing day one. Was I wrong?
No, I think there are so many different ways that you can look at the different fitness testing. I think performance testing as a whole has become really popular, not just on the pitch, but in the gym. And I think it's really important that, firstly, whatever you're testing, is that you're testing for a reason, and you're going to use that, and it's got purpose to it, because you want that data to objectively help you design and lead your thoughts into your training plans and kind of the planning process. I don't think you should test for a test's sake, or collecting data just for the sake of collecting data because every team does it. I think whatever you decide, we want to test, make sure you're doing it for a reason, and it's going to actually affect what you do. And I think it's really important. But there are both sides to it. There's that physical side that you're looking to purely see what kind of condition is this player returning to in pre-season, and it's not just comparing one player to the other. It is kind of comparing them to maybe their historical data. It's maybe just understanding where they're at in their own plan and their own physical sort of ability right now. So then you can actually make sure they're kind of designed appropriately going into the pre-season. So I think it's really important that, from a physical point of view, that you do some kind of testing. And there's so many different ways to do it. There's lots of ways you can skin a cat. The bleep test, the yo-yo, the mass test is becoming really important, really kind of popular now. And there's loads of ways of doing it. And I think the psychological side is fascinating. And I've had that conversation with many coaches before where, okay, I maybe say, I'm not a massive fan of the bleep test, for example. From a physical point of view, I think I'm not sure it fully tells us what we want it to tell us, but I purely appreciate, and I really do appreciate the psychological side of it. Like, who's willing to hurt? Like, who's willing to put themselves in a tough spot during the test and actually push themselves to a limit? Who's willing to actually listen to instructions? Go on the beep, not just go early or try and jump, or who's able to do the work and turn sharply and put their foot on the line and do it properly rather than cutting corners and that type of stuff. I really do understand that social psycho side to it. And I think there's ways that you can do it. And I think, again, that just comes down to each team collectively coming up with the plan and saying, I, as a coach, would like to do this test. Can you use that? And you might say, no, we won't probably use the data for it, but if you want to do it, that's great. We can do it, no problem. And And also, look, at the end of the day, that's if you even if you don't use any of the data that you take from a bleed test, for example, that's a good 15, 20-minute hard effort type conditioning run, isn't it? It's high intensity, it's high repeat, repetitive type work that the players are going to get some kind of physical stimulus from the pure basis of it. It's a hard run that they're going to get some physical kind of benefits from. So there are different ways you can look at it. I think testing is only important if you're going to use that data to gain something from it, both on the pitch and in the gym, and kind of help design those individual programs, making them work on the things that they need to work on, continue working on their strengths and improving their weaknesses, finding areas of sort of worry and real weakness that you need to improve and make sure that they're strengthening. If that's, for example, a gym-based exercise is looking at hamstring strength, there may be a significant imbalance between their right or left side, or a general weakness that we know we must improve in terms of their strength. Just kind of highlighting these areas that we can input and make sure that each individual player has each individual kind of development plan to give themselves the best basis moving forward, throughout pre-season and into the season.
Yeah, that brings us along nicely then to the individual piece. And one thing I always liked about the pre-season testing was that it would give the players who did a lot of work over the summer an opportunity to kind of showcase that, and you can recognize that there. And I thought in front of the group and etc. I thought that was a really good, powerful psychosocial piece of it. But the piece then that I know a lot of coaches will worry about and probably keeps a lot of coaches awake over the summer is like, what if such and such, my goal scorer doesn't come in fit? And that's obviously going to happen at every single level in every country. People are going to come in at different stages. How would you manage someone who you're looking at and saying, all right, they've come in and they're not at the level that you would like them to be? Because the old school way would be that you would do extra work with that player. Yeah. But I'm guessing that's got to be out the window now, right? With that's going to add more stress or add more volume, increase injuries. Where are we with that?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we understand that players are definitely different beasts than they were previously. Unfortunately, off seasons tend to be getting shorter, especially over here in the UK. Off seasons tend to be really short. And players are even playing through off seasons. The amount of competitions they have, especially at senior level, if they play internationally, they seem to be they have to train and kind of play through that off season. So I think the base level of condition and the base level of fitness that players are returning to in pre-season is definitely a lot higher, and it is an improvement. So, and the players have really well designed off-season programs that's going to maintain fitness and kind of build certain parts of fitness anyway. So when they come into pre-season, they're at a level that they can kind of kick on. In terms of players that, perhaps haven't followed the off-season program, that perhaps haven't done what they should have done, I think there are certain ways that you can do things to make sure you're always maintaining some kind of fitness without sort of impacting what they're doing on the pitch. I think we try to be really creative with certain things. And of course, it comes down to the resources available to you. But there are lots of ways to condition a player off feet, the use of kind of off feet, CV work on the bike, whether you've got an opportunity to sort of upper body or total body conditioning, something that isn't that mechanical stress, like you say, the pounding on a pitch or doing extra pounding on a treadmill, but you're just getting something that is going to stimulate that physiological kind of adaptation in the sort of CV and the respiratory systems, but just getting that way without influencing what they're having to do kind of on that joint level and the soft tissue level. So there are ways you can do it. Again, it's utilizing off-feet methods, it's bike sessions. If at a club previously, we were lucky that we had altitude chambers. We were lucky that we had certain resources available to us at a high level, that we kind of sat down with the player and come up with this correct plan that was going to get them up to a level as quick as possible. I think it's important not to rush into any decision with that type of stuff. I think a pre-season for us over here is probably 6-7 weeks. And the whole sole purpose of a pre-season is not just to get that team ready for week one. It's to get that team and those individual players available and robust and physically capable to be able to last throughout a whole long season, be able to kind of perform in the latter stages of the season when it matters. So having that plan in place and sitting down with the player, sitting down with the coach, and not just trying to rush into it and do it in a week or 2 weeks and like you say, smash them every morning before training and getting them doing extra bits and bobs, because it needs to be a long-term viewpoint. We know this player isn't quite ready day one, but come, week one of the season in 7 weeks' time, he will be ready, and then he will be ready to continue with that throughout the whole season and not just kind of panic and rush into, we need to get him ready for week 2 preseason, because there's plenty of time to do that. So I think there are ways, and you've got to be smart with the ways and your methods and with that. And again, it's just using all of the resources available to us to make sure we're monitoring what we need to monitor, making sure we're not just spiking them, and making sure that they're going through the program in the best way possible, and then utilising everyone's kind of expertise and everyone's kind of knowledge and experiences with that, and making it educating that player into what he's doing and why he's doing it is a massive thing.
Brilliant. On the education piece, I kind of get most of my information around sports science world now on LinkedIn with articles and different. One thing, I want to get your thoughts on this. One thing I never see, and I've thought about this a few weeks ago, and I wonder if in today's world of research, readiness apps that players are now coming in and how do you feel this morning? And where do you sit with that, or where does research sit with that as to how effective they are, how accurate they are, how actionable you can take that information? Do you think they're really effective, or has that dropped a little?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to kind of the testing side. I think it's only worth doing if it's going to influence something, and if it's going to actually utilize that data and you're going to use it for what, if something is being flagged up, you must use it. I don't think it should just be a box tick sort of exercise. We combine both that subjective and some kind of objective data with that in terms of our readiness and our monitoring. So, for example, the players will have to come in pre-training and have filled in their readiness questionnaire, which is kind of just a really simple questionnaire. Is, it might be a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10, however it is you want to do it, but what mood they're in, how sore they feel, how tired do they feel, how did they sleep, and kind of gives them an opportunity that flag something up that if they are feeling a bit tired. With that being said, all it is doing is stimulating conversation around that. And I think it just gives you an opportunity to not miss anything. You pretty much have one-on-one conversations with every single player most mornings anyway. And especially us as performance staff, sports science, medical, we'll try and make sure that we have those conversations with players. It's a really simple one. It might just be in the cafeteria at the coffee machine. How you feeling this morning, mate? You feeling all right? Or and you go, I'm leggy, I'm a bit tight in my hamstring. And then that just stimulates conversation to then say, okay, right, let's go see the physio, just check it out, and we'll take it from there. And that might stimulate the conversation further with the coach, just to say, he's a little bit tight, he's a bit fatigued, so we might just need to ease him off in this part of the session, or he can only really do half the session today, and just make sure that you're kind of adapting those programs sort of appropriately. We also then match that with some kind of objective data. So we might do some kind of physical test most mornings, whether it's a simple sort of jump, counter movement jump, just a vertical jump that is going to give us data from, historical data that we can kind of understand what their norms are and what they normally do, and how those kind of changes, if there is a big decrease in their performance, that might further back up what they're feeling and further kind of provide that flag for us in terms of, wow, they've got a real kind of decrease in their performance here. This might be fatigue related, this might be injury related. And again, it just stimulates the process moving forwards in terms of adapting their own individual plans. So, I think each kind of element in itself is important. But I think collectively and combining them all, it really does give you the information to make sure that you're making the right sort of performance decisions, really, in terms of training and making sure that each player is doing the appropriate amount each day. And like I say, you're not just pushing each player and kind of making sure you're not breaking that way. So it's really important that you're collecting that data, but making sure you're doing something with that is as important as collecting the data. Because I've had experiences where players also try and test you as well. They'll classically, if it's a scale of 1 to 5, they will just put 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 for days on end, weeks on end, and then suddenly they'll throw a curveball in to check you're looking at it, and they'll put a 1 or something, and they'll check that you're looking at it and not just kind of doing it for the sake of doing it. Whereas, they're the ones that you need to kind of flag up and make sure you get on board with. But you just need to make sure you're utilising it really. It's not just a tick box exercise.
Yeah, brilliant. Great answer. Something else in your webinar presentation was the weekly schedule that you ran through. And one thing that jumped out to me, because I think, again, sometimes traditional thinking, you're putting S&C, like add-on post-session weights. And this is something that I actually heard it about a month ago from a coach. I was talking about their periodization and their planning. And they're like, okay, well, how do you deal with the tempo of this and this and this? And they're like, yeah, the additional work matters a lot that they're doing in the gym alongside it. And I always think, again, something we don't talk about that in the coaching community. So how important is that, whereas a traditional coach would probably think, like, my head would go, well, like, if you've just done a tough session, don't go in there and lift all this here. But obviously it matters, right?
Yeah, so, they need to work really collectively. The gym-based work and the pitch stuff, they need to be really sort of unified and make sure they're actually working to kind of support each other, right? So, there are different ways that you can do things in the gym. There are different ways of doing things. You don't always have to go in and lift to your max and lift heavy and lift high volumes and high amounts. You're going to wake up the next day sore and you can't get off the toilet sore. And there needs to be, ways of doing things without actually creating physical soreness, but you're still getting that physical adaptation. So, for example, in the off season, where obviously match demands are really low, they're not playing matches, their running and their conditioning program might be relatively low intensity. It's kind of building that base, sort of longer, slower type running, so they're not getting too much sort of fatigue from that. Whereas, so your gym type work can be relatively demanding, and you can kind of go high volume, sort of what we class as hypertrophy based, where you might feel a bit sore the next day, but you're sort of getting that adaptation. Whereas then when you come into pre-season, and running load is obviously going to go higher, and the physical load on pitch is going to go higher because you're returning to training and obviously building through into games, but you're returning into that football specific work. Your gym work will obviously then counterbalance that by becoming lower and become a bit more maintenance type program. But you still can do things in the gym without this going to have that negative influence on the pitch. So utilizing things like isometric type exercises, that you're still getting the same amount of kind of stimulus and that same amount of force production from a specific joint or a single muscle, but you're not getting that fatigue, soreness element that you do with eccentric type exercise, for example. So it's just how you manipulate sessions and how you change certain sessions that you're still getting a physical adaptation, you're still getting a physical stimulus, but you're not causing underlying fatigue and underlying soreness that is going to influence and impact them when they go out into the pitch. And that needs to have that counterbalance to each other. And it's the same in season when there are periods of, one game per week, you can have a bit higher gym loads. Whereas games when you've got weeks where there are 2 games per week, and you have those midweek games and you've got them periods of complete chaos where there's games coming left, right, and centre, your gym load is going to be a lot lower, and it's just going to be a maintenance program. So I think it's utilising your experience and your ability as a coach to modify sessions, modify volume, modify exercise types, utilise certain things that you can do, using, what we call kind of minimal dose sort of stimulus, where there are, in terms of research, you can still get good physical adaptations from small amounts and small dosage of physical work. So just coming in and doing a few key performance exercises, it doesn't have to be the full program, but it's a few key performance exercises that individual player needs to do, again, based off our testing maybe, then it's still giving them the basis and the foundation that they can still improve their robustness and improve their physical capabilities. So I think it isn't one or the other. And I think they have to complement each other, and you need to have that viewpoint that they are there to help each other. The gym is there to help the player perform on the pitch. It's not there to hinder them by creating so much soreness. So I think it's just up to us as coaches to understand all the elements and how we can adapt a session but still get the benefits of it.
Nutrition is a big part, obviously, of performance, but something that is it worth changing anything in a culture in terms of, David Moyes tried to change the chips that we all know about and got in trouble, and then Arsene Wenger changed the culture and was still gets credit for that environment. And is that a marginal gain, or is that something that could just, do you let players kind of have what they're comfortable with, or where would you sit in that there?
Well, I think first and foremost, it comes up under a performance type thing. So it's a sports science and a sports nutritionist kind of responsibility to have things in place and work with the kitchen staff or work with the chefs. Again, I've been fortunate to work at clubs where we have performance chefs and nutritionists that is their sole responsibility to have that fantastic sort of nutrition and supplementation and everything available to them. But I think whatever the message is, I think the message needs to be really consistent across the board. So if the message is coming from the sports scientist, it needs to be backed up by the coach. And I think the biggest thing for me is the whole education piece. The marginal gains thing, it's so important. The 1% is important only if the other 95% is good. So I mean, there's no point taking away ketchup at training because you're looking to get that marginal gain if they're going to go home and have a McDonald's anyway of an evening. So it's about educating the players into what they should be doing for fuel, how they should be fueling their body, the different types of fueling for different types of days and the requirements needed for pre-match fuel, for example, is a lot different to post-match fuel and what you need to put in your body in terms of supplementation and all the nutrition sides. So if you don't have that base level of knowledge and that base education, taking away the marginal bits like the ketchups or the salt at the table isn't really going to have too much of an impact if the rest of the kind of core 90% of their kind of lifestyle isn't good enough. Then I think that's the main thing for me is educating that player into what they should be doing as a whole. And then once you've got that, of course, now we can bring in those little supplementation that's going to have that marginal gain, or taking away something that's going to have this marginal gain. But the crux of it is that whole lifestyle needs to be appropriate and needs to make sure that they're educated on that lifestyle before we even worry about the little bits and bobs before, taking away stuff at the training ground or the stadiums or whatever.
All right, last one for you. And kind of going back to the risk piece is a quote that you had of yours, and I read, "Elite football is more intense, yet we've become safe and comfortable in physical training. Saying we've always done it this way won't cut it. We need to break this mindset for high performance." And I wanted to get your thoughts to zoom out a little bit just on the community and kind of extend that conversation we had before on technology. Do you feel that Tony Strudwick has talked a lot about this over the years, about maybe an over-reliance on the tech? Maybe the tech has moved us away from being more maybe empathetic or intuitive and changing it. What's your thoughts on that there? How do we go back to what you're referencing there?
Yeah, I completely agree with Tony there, that I think, of course, having these resources available to us that we can really get kind of minute kind of data and real specific data like available to us for each individual player is brilliant. But we definitely have become reliant on that data and a little bit blinded by that data, I suppose, that we're getting so worried about making sure that a player is fitting into a certain zone or hitting a certain amount of meters per session or per week or per month that we're actually getting away from what we're trying to do. And it goes back to what I was saying at the start in terms of raising that ceiling. But at the end of the day, we are performance staff. We are there to work with the coach and make sure that we are looking to improve performance and have a direct level of development of a physical and physiological kind of capability. So I think I've always, the most dangerous saying in high performance is we've always done it this way. And it's like, well, the game is changing. at the base of it, the game is getting quicker and faster every year. The data that they kind of pump out for us, the players are doing more at the top level. The players are doing a lot more distance. They're doing a lot more distance, high intensity and high speed. They're doing a lot more kind of high intensity actions. So if we're kind of staying in that same program we've done for the last few years, then we are just going to stand still, and the game is going to evolve and is going to move on. So we have to be able to sit down, look at our program and say, that worked, this didn't. Why didn't that work? Okay, have those real critical thinking and have those critical conversations really with each other in terms of why didn't that work, and have that ability to think, why didn't it work? What are we going to do to fix that? If it did work, great, but how can we make it better? Not just it worked, so let's keep it that way. Why can't we make it better? The whole, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's like, well, why don't we make it better and do it and make it even stronger? I think we just need to get away from that safe mentality of worrying about injuries, worrying about that side of the game, whereas our mentality needs to be on high performance and pushing performance as high as we can. And obviously doing that, like I say, and making sure we're doing it in an appropriate manner, of course, but always having that mindset that we are there to develop individuals. We are there to develop a certain physical capability. We're not just there to make sure they don't get injured throughout a season. We're kind of doing them maybe a disservice if we don't challenge them in certain ways and challenge them in certain programming and making sure that we're pushing them to improve themselves. Maybe that's out on the pitch from a certain type of physical action. You're doing them a disservice if you're not going to that player and saying you need to improve your repeated sprint ability, for example, because that's what you do in a game. Then you're doing them a disservice, because when they have to do it in a game, they can't do it in a game and they look poor and there's a negative sort of impact on that. Whereas if you go with a mindset that we need to improve this is how we're going to do it. We're going to overload you, but we're going to do it really appropriately in this type of training program. So we're going to slowly increase your load. After each session, we'll do, for example, it might be simple as after each training session each week, on our Tuesday training session, we might do 2 runs. The week after, we might do 4 runs. Then we might do 6 runs, and slowly build up their capability to be able to improve themselves, rather than just go, oh, well, they're not injured at the minute, so we'll just keep them that way. And I think it's just that mindset of, no, we're there to actually improve these players and give them the support and not just do them a disservice to that, really. So, yeah, I do agree with Tony with that. We're a little bit reliant on data, and we get a little bit blinded by numbers and fancy spreadsheets and Excel spreadsheets that are telling us when they've gone 5 meters, 10 meters, 50 meters over what they did last week. And it's like, well, okay, they'll be all right. They'll adapt and we'll be good and push performance and have a real kind of developmental mindset on it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit before we started recording. I said I feel tactics has gone in the same spot, where if you have a periodization and you've got a game model, then all of a sudden you've got your tactics are all set, your frameworks are all set, and yeah, it's not really the same mindset that you talk. It's not a developmental mindset. We're saying, all right, well, this is a starting spot to get them to. Can we take this somewhere and make it better and kind of engage people? And bringing me last question. Whenever is that then connected to the players that are under immense? There's immense pressure in preseason because of the monotony of it and can we break into a starting spot? But there's also a bit of a groundhog day with those as well, where players can be like, you mentioned going up there in the cafeteria, how you feeling today? After a week, most of them are, whatever. So I wonder how much of that is down to, do we take the same processes every year because it's there? I wonder if we need to challenge that just across the coaching community, not just the S&C community.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's, players are, they're complicated athletes. Like they're under huge amounts of stress, especially at top end levels. Like the amount of pressure that they're put under, it's an extremely difficult job. Of course, they get paid extremely well for it, but that doesn't take away the stress and pressure that they get put under. And I think what they do see is when there is a process and when there's a plan and a clear identity to a team and a clear identity to a training process and training plan that's going to help them as a team. There's clear ideas on how the gym links with the pitch stuff, how the pitch work with the sports scientist links to the training session itself with the coach. When they see that kind of link between everything and you create that buy-in, I think that's where you just get into the win. Once you've got that buy-in with players that they really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's going to help them, and they see the improvements that they're making and they see the developments that they're making, not just a physical point of view, but they see the tactical side, they understand the tactical side, they're starting to really get it and it's working, the games are going well or whatever, and they feel good. Once you have that buy-in, it kind of snowballs and you get that environment and that culture of we're in this together and pushing in a direction together. And I think that is just so important, that any plan, any periodization, any pre-season, whatever it is, whatever we've discussed, that everyone is on the same page, the coach, the sports scientist, the performance team, the medical staff, whoever it is. So the players do pick up on that so quickly that they do really see when things are different or people have different ideas, they pick on that. They're like sharks. They pick on it straight away. Whereas if they see there's this process and this flow between everything and everything's complementing each other, that's when you have that buy-in, and that's when the players just are energized from it, and they just, you want them to come in and love coming in and working every day and improving. And that's all we ask really whenever we've been in environments, that you ask a player to improve each and every day. It might be a physical improvement, it might be a tactical improvement, it might just be a general kind of move one step forward. So it's having that kind of real fluid sort of connection between everything is so important.
Brilliant. Outstanding. Matt, we've run out of time. We won't go through half my questions. Always a sign of a good interview. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll get you on again, hopefully. Yeah, definitely. I can jump on. I can talk for hours about this sort of stuff. So I'd have been here for a few days, I think, if you didn't stop us. So, thanks for having me, mate. And I'd say if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to try and answer everything I can. So I'm sure you'll link all the bits and bobs to whatever. So just reach out if you do have any questions, and I'm sure we'll jump on another one to get through the other half of questions. Brilliant. Yeah, I'll put your email out to Cody if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm sure a few of them will be reaching out.